Emily Carter woke up early on a cold November morning, the kind of day where the frost clung stubbornly to the windows and the air felt heavy with the promise of snow. She lived in a small apartment on the south side of Chicago, a place that was cozy but far from luxurious. It wasn't much, but it was home, for her and her younger brother, Jack. At just 24 years old, Emily carried more responsibilities than most people her age could imagine. Her days revolved around two things: working long hours at the diner, downtown, and making sure Jack had everything he needed. Jack was only 19, but life hadn't been easy for him either. A car accident 2 years ago had left him with injuries that required ongoing medical treatment. Between hospital bills and rent, money was always tight. Emily did what she could to keep their lives afloat, even if it meant sacrificing her own dreams along the way. Sometimes, late at night when the world outside grew quiet, she would sit by the window and think about all the plans she once had. To travel, to go back to school, to maybe one day open her own little cafe. But those thoughts were quickly pushed aside whenever reality came knocking. That morning, after fixing a quick breakfast of toast and coffee for herself and Jack, Emily bundled up in her worn-out coat and headed out into the biting wind. The streets were already bustling with activity, people rushing to work, kids walking to school, and shopkeepers opening their stores for the day. Emily walked briskly, her breath visible in the chilly air, until she reached the diner where she worked. It was a modest place, nothing fancy, but it had a certain charm. The neon sign above the door flickered slightly, spelling out Maggie's Diner in bright red letters. As soon as Emily stepped inside, the warmth of the diner enveloped her like a hug. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mixed with bacon grease filled the air, and the low hum of conversation created a comforting background noise. Maggie's wasn't just a job for Emily, it was a second home. She knew the regulars by name, remembered their favorite orders, and always greeted them with a smile. Even on her toughest days, she made it a point to be kind. That was just who Emily was. A giver, someone who found joy in helping others, even when she had so little to give herself. The lunch rush hadn't started yet, so Emily took a moment to tie her apron around her waist and check the schedule pinned to the wall. Today was going to be busy as usual. There were tables to clean, orders to take, and dishes to serve. But Emily didn't mind. Work kept her mind off things, the mounting bills, the worry over Jack's health, the feeling that she might never get ahead no matter how hard she tried. As long as she stayed busy, she could push those thoughts away. By mid-afternoon, the diner was buzzing with customers. Families sat together in booths, sharing burgers and fries, while businessmen hunched over cups of coffee, typing away on their laptops. Emily moved between the tables with practiced ease, refilling drinks, dropping off plates, and chatting with patrons. She had a knack for making people feel welcome, whether it was through a genuine compliment or a simple, "How's your day going?" It was during one of these rounds that she noticed him, an elderly man sitting alone in the corner booth near the window. He looked out of place among the lively crowd. His clothes were neatly pressed but clearly old, his coat patched in places. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the menu, and his eyes scanned the items slowly, as though weighing each option carefully. Something about him tugged at Emily's heartstrings. Maybe it was the way he seemed unsure, almost hesitant, or maybe it was the sadness etched into the lines of his face. Whatever it was, she felt drawn to him. "Hi there," Emily said warmly as she approached his table. "Can I get you started with something to drink?" The man looked up, startled, as if he hadn't expected anyone to speak to him. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Emily saw something in his gaze, a mixture of gratitude and weariness. "Just water, please," he replied softly. His voice was gentle, tinged with an accent she couldn't quite place. "Sure thing," Emily said, with a smile. "And can I interest you in anything to eat? Our soup of the day is chicken noodle, and it's really good." He hesitated, glancing back at the menu. "I'll have the soup and a slice of bread," he finally said, closing the menu and setting it aside. Emily nodded and jotted down his order before heading to the counter to hand it off to the cook. As she turned back toward the dining area, she caught sight of the man reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a worn wallet, its edges frayed from years of use. He flipped it open, revealing a few crumpled bills inside. Emily watched as he counted them slowly, his brow furrowing as though he were trying to decide if he had enough. Her chest tightened. She recognized that look. It was the same one she'd seen in her own reflection countless times when she worried about paying the bills. When the food arrived, Emily brought it to his table with a cheerful demeanor. "Here we go," she said, placing the steaming bowl of soup and a small plate of bread in front of him. "Let me know if you need anything else." "Thank you," he murmured, not meeting her eyes. He picked up his spoon and began eating slowly, savoring each bite as though it were a rare treat. Emily lingered for a moment, pretending to adjust the salt and pepper shakers on the table. She couldn't shake the feeling that this man needed more than just a warm meal. After checking on her other tables, Emily returned to the register to process some checks. As she rang up a customer's bill, she glanced over at the elderly man again. He was still eating, but now he seemed distracted, staring out the window at the gray sky beyond. Emily's mind raced. She knew what it was like to count every penny, to wonder if you'd have enough to cover the basics. And she also knew how it felt to receive kindness when you least expected it. Without giving herself time to second guess, Emily grabbed the receipt from the man's table and added it to her tip jar instead of charging it to his account. When she delivered the check a short while later, she smiled brightly and said, "Your meal's on the house today. Consider it a thank you for stopping by." The man looked up, confusion flickering across his face. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I covered it," Emily explained simply. "Don't worry about it." For a long moment he just stared at her. His lips parted as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Then, to Emily's surprise, tears welled up in his eyes. He blinked rapidly, trying to hold them back. "You didn't have to do that," he said hoarsely. I don't even know your name." "It's Emily," she replied softly, "and it's no trouble at all." The man shook his head, visibly moved. "You're very kind, Emily, thank you." He paused, then added, "My name is Harold Bennett." "Well, Mr. Bennett, I hope you enjoy the rest of your meal," Emily said, giving him one last smile before moving on to help another customer. As she walked away, Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest. She didn't expect anything in return for her gesture. It wasn't about that. Helping someone, even in a small way, reminded her that there was still goodness in the world. Little did she know, her act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. The next morning, Emily arrived at the diner earlier than usual. The streets were quieter than they had been the previous day, and a thin layer of frost still coated the sidewalks. She tightened her scarf around her neck as she stepped inside, flipping on the lights and starting the coffee machine. It was always her favorite part of the day, the calm before the storm, when the diner felt like it belonged solely to her. As the aroma of freshly brewed coffee began to fill the air, Emily busied herself with setting up the tables and checking the supplies. About an hour later, just as the first few customers trickled in, the bell above the door jingled again. Emily glanced up, expecting to see another early riser looking for breakfast. Instead, she froze mid-step. Standing there was Harold Bennett, the elderly man from the day before. He looked much the same, his coat slightly worn, his posture stooped, but today he carried something with him, a large, weathered briefcase that seemed oddly out of place in the cozy diner. Emily blinked, surprised to see him so soon. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett," she said warmly, recovering quickly. "I didn't expect to see you back here so soon." Harold smiled faintly, though there was a seriousness in his expression that hadn't been there the day before. "Good morning, Emily. I came to thank you properly," he said, his voice steady but soft. Emily tilted her head, puzzled. "Thank me? For what?" "For yesterday," Harold replied simply. "For paying for my meal. That was very kind of you." "Oh, it wasn't a big deal," Emily said quickly, waving her hand dismissively. "Really, it's no trouble at all. I'm just glad you enjoyed it." Harold shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "It was a big deal, to me. You reminded Me that there are still good people in this world. His words hung in the air for a moment, heavy with meaning. Emily didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to being thanked so sincerely, especially for something she considered so small. Before she could say anything else, Harold set the briefcase down on the nearest table and opened it. Emily's eyes widened in shock. Inside was a neatly organized stack of cash, hundreds of bills bundled together. Her jaw dropped slightly as she stared at the money, unable to believe what she was seeing. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's for you," Harold said firmly, "to repay your kindness." Emily stepped back instinctively, shaking her head. "No, I can't take that. I didn't do anything special. Please, you don't have to do this." Harold closed the briefcase and held it out toward her. "Yes, I do. You've done more for me than you realize. This isn't charity, it's gratitude. Let me do this for you." Emily hesitated, torn between her instincts and the weight of Harold's sincerity. She had never been given anything so freely, not since her parents passed away years ago. But accepting such a gift felt wrong somehow, like it would undo the simplicity of her gesture the day before. "I appreciate it, I really do," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. "But I can't accept it. It wouldn't feel right." Harold studied her for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Then, without saying another word, he placed the briefcase on the counter and walked over to a nearby booth. He sat down and motioned for Emily to join him. Reluctantly, she followed, unsure of what to expect. "Emily," he began once she was seated across from him, "let me tell you a little about myself. Maybe then you'll understand why I want to help you." She nodded, curiosity getting the better of her. Harold took a deep breath as if gathering his thoughts and began to speak. "Years ago, I was a successful businessman. I owned several companies, traveled the world, and lived a life many would envy. But success came with its own challenges. I made mistakes, poor investments, bad decisions, and eventually, I lost everything. My family turned their backs on me, my friends disappeared, and I found myself alone, struggling to make ends meet." Emily listened intently, her heart aching for the man sitting across from her. She couldn't imagine what it must have been like to lose everything he had worked so hard for. "For a long time I thought I deserved it," Harold continued, "that maybe I'd brought it all on myself. But then, every now and then, someone would show me kindness. A stranger who offered me a meal, a neighbor who lent me a hand. Those moments reminded me that there's still goodness in the world, even when life feels hopeless. And yesterday, when you paid for my meal without expecting anything in return, you reminded me of that again." Tears pricked at the corners of Emily's eyes as she listened. She had never thought of her actions as anything extraordinary, but hearing Harold's story made her realize just how much even the smallest gestures could mean to someone. "So please," Harold said gently, "let me pay it forward. Take some of this money. Use it to ease your burdens, to give yourself a chance to breathe. You deserve it." Emily swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered, "but only enough to help with the essentials for my brother's medical bills and rent. Nothing more." Harold smiled, a look of relief washing over his face. "That's fair," he said. He counted out a portion of the cash and handed it to her. "This should cover what you need for now, and if you ever find yourself in a tight spot again, don't hesitate to reach out." Emily accepted the money, her hands trembling slightly. She didn't know what to say, so she settled for a heartfelt, "Thank you." As Harold stood to leave, he paused by the door and turned back to her. "Kindness has a way of coming full circle, Emily. Don't forget that." With those final words, he stepped outside, leaving Emily standing in the middle of the diner, clutching the envelope tightly in her hands. The weight of what had just happened settled over her slowly, filling her with a mixture of emotions, gratitude, disbelief, and a newfound sense of hope. Over the next few days, Emily couldn't stop thinking about Harold. Who was he really? Why had he chosen to help her? And what did he mean by kindness coming full circle? These questions swirled in her mind as she went about her routine, serving customers and keeping the diner running smoothly. But amidst the uncertainty, one thing became clear. Harold's generosity had given her more than just financial relief. It had reignited a spark within her, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was light to be found. One afternoon, while tidying up after the lunch rush, Emily noticed an envelope tucked under the counter. At first, she thought it might be a misplaced bill or note from one of the other waitresses. But when she picked it up and saw her name written neatly on the front, her heart skipped a beat. Inside was a letter, handwritten in careful script. "Dear Emily," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I've decided to take another step in showing my gratitude. Enclosed is information about a culinary school in New York City. I've already paid your tuition. You have talent, Emily, and a heart of gold. Don't let circumstances hold you back. Consider this my way of investing in someone who deserves a chance. With admiration, Harold." Emily's hands trembled as she read the letter over and over, each word sinking in deeper than the last. A culinary school? In New York? It sounded like a dream too big to be real. Yet here it was, laid out in black and white thanks to Harold's belief in her. At first, doubt crept in. Could she really leave Chicago? What about Jack? What if she failed? But as the days passed, Emily realized she couldn't ignore the opportunity. Harold had given her a lifeline, a chance to chase a dream she had buried long ago. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope, not just for herself but for the future she could build for Jack and for others. And so, with Harold's support and her own determination, Emily began making plans. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew one thing for certain. Harold's act of kindness had changed her life forever. Emily stared at the letter in her hands, reading it for what felt like the 100th time. The words blurred together as tears welled up in her eyes. A culinary school in New York City, paid for by Harold? It sounded impossible, like something out of a storybook. Yet there it was, written plainly on the page, a chance to change her life in ways she had only dreamed of. For days, Emily wrestled with the decision. Leaving Chicago meant leaving behind everything familiar. Her job at the diner, her cozy apartment, and most importantly, her brother Jack. How could she go so far away when he still needed her? What if something happened while she was gone? These questions swirled in her mind, keeping her awake at night. But then she thought about Harold's words, about kindness coming full circle. He had seen potential in her, even when she couldn't see it herself. And deep down, Emily knew she couldn't let this opportunity slip through her fingers. She had spent years putting others first, sacrificing her own dreams for the sake of survival. Now, finally, someone was giving her a chance to build a better future, not just for herself, but for Jack too. With a mix of fear and determination, Emily sat down one evening to talk to Jack. They were sitting at their small kitchen table, the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the silence between them. Emily took a deep breath before speaking. "Jack," she began softly, "I need to tell you something important." Jack looked up from his plate, curiosity flickering across his face. "What is it?" "I've been given an incredible opportunity," Emily explained, her voice trembling slightly. "There's a culinary school in New York City and someone has paid for my tuition. I can learn how to become a professional chef." Jack's eyes widened in surprise. "That's amazing, Em. But why are you looking so worried?" Emily hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It's in New York. That's far away from here, from you. I don't know if I should go. What if something happens while I'm gone?" Jack reached across the table and placed a hand over hers. "Emily, you've done so much for me already. You've taken care of me, worked yourself to the bone, and never complained once. You deserve this. I'll be okay. I promise we can figure things out together." His words brought tears to her eyes. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Absolutely," Jack replied firmly. "You have to do this. If anyone deserves a shot at their dreams, it's you." With Jack's blessing, Emily made the decision to enroll in the culinary program. Over the next few weeks, she prepared tirelessly for the move. She saved as much money as she could from her shifts at the diner, packed her belongings into boxes, and said tearful goodbyes to her coworkers and regular customers. Everyone at Maggie's diner was thrilled for her, though they couldn't help feeling a little sad to see her go. The day finally came when Emily boarded a train bound for New York City. As the cityscape faded into the distance behind her, she felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. The bustling streets of Manhattan were unlike anything she had ever experienced. Bright lights, towering skyscrapers, and people rushing past in every direction. It was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. Her first few weeks at the culinary school were challenging. The classes were intense, the instructors demanding, and the competition fierce. Emily often found herself staying late in the kitchens, practicing techniques until her hands ached. There were moments when she doubted herself, wondering if she truly belonged in such a prestigious program. But whenever those doubts crept in, she remembered Harold's faith in her and pushed forward. During one particular class, Emily discovered her true passion: pastry arts. She loved the precision and creativity involved in baking, the way flour, sugar, and butter could transform into something beautiful and delicious. Her instructor, Chef Martinez, noticed her talent and encouraged her to focus on desserts. "You have a gift," he told her after tasting one of her creations. "Don't waste it." Inspired by his praise, Emily threw herself into mastering the art of pastry making. She experimented with new recipes, perfected classic techniques, and even started sketching designs for cakes and pastries in a notebook she carried everywhere. Slowly but surely, her confidence grew. As the months passed, Emily began to stand out among her classmates. Her work caught the attention of not only her instructors, but also local bakery owners who visited the school to scout for talent. One afternoon, after presenting a particularly impressive dessert platter during a showcase event, Emily was approached by a woman named Mrs. Langley, the owner of a well-known bakery in Brooklyn. "I'd like to offer you an internship, Mrs." Langley said with a warm smile. "Your creativity and skill are exactly what we're looking for." Emily couldn't believe her ears. An internship? At a real bakery? It was another step closer to achieving her dream. She accepted the offer without hesitation, eager to gain hands-on experience in the industry. Balancing school and the internship wasn't easy. Emily often found herself juggling late-night baking sessions with early morning classes. Some days, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, but she reminded herself of all the sacrifices she and Harold had made to get her here. Giving up wasn't an option. One evening, after a long shift at the bakery, Emily returned to her tiny apartment and collapsed onto the couch. She pulled out the notebook where she had been sketching ideas for her future business. Flipping through the pages, she smiled at the drawings of cakes adorned with intricate floral patterns, cupcakes topped with swirls of frosting, and delicate macarons arranged in perfect rows. Each design represented a piece of her vision, a bakery that would not only serve delicious treats but also bring joy to its customers. As she flipped to a blank page, Emily picked up her pen and began writing. She listed everything she would need to make her dream a reality: funding, equipment, a location, and a team of dedicated employees. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream big, to imagine a future where she was no longer struggling to survive, but thriving instead. Little did Emily know, her journey was about to take another unexpected turn. One crisp autumn morning, as she walked to class, she received a phone call from an unknown number. Hesitant but curious, she answered. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "Emily Carter?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, that's me. This is Robert Hayes from the Culinary Arts Foundation," the man continued. "We've reviewed your portfolio, and we'd like to invite you to apply for our annual scholarship award. The winner will receive funding to open their own business." Emily's heart raced. A scholarship to start her own bakery? It sounded too good to be true. But as she listened to Mr. Hayes explain the details, she realized this was yet another opportunity, one she couldn't afford to pass up. Over the next few weeks, Emily poured her heart and soul into preparing her application. She included photos of her best creations, letters of recommendation from her instructors, and a detailed proposal outlining her plans for the bakery. She named it Bennett's Bakes, in honor of Harold, whose generosity had set her on this path. When the announcement came that she had won the scholarship, Emily burst into tears of joy. It was official. She was going to open her very own bakery. But more than that, she was living proof that kindness, no matter how small, could create ripples that changed lives forever. And as she stood in the empty space that would soon become Bennett's Bakes, Emily whispered a silent thank you to Harold. Though she hadn't seen him since that fateful day at the diner, his impact on her life was undeniable. Because of him, she had found not only her purpose but also the courage to chase her dreams. The grand opening of Bennett's Bakes was a day Emily had dreamed about for years, though she never imagined it would actually happen. The small bakery sat on a quiet street in Chicago, just a few blocks away from the diner where her journey had begun. Its windows were lined with freshly baked goods, golden croissants, colorful cupcakes, and intricately decorated cakes that caught the sunlight streaming through the glass. A hand-painted sign above the door read, Bennett's Bakes, in bold letters, a tribute to Harold Bennett, the man who had changed her life. Emily stood behind the counter on opening day, her heart pounding with excitement and nerves. She wore an apron dusted with flour, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged the final trays of pastries. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, curious neighbors and friends eager to see what Emily had created. Jack was there too, standing proudly near the entrance, ready to help greet customers. As the doors opened, a wave of people poured in, filling the cozy space with chatter and laughter. Emily greeted each person with a warm smile, offering samples of her signature chocolate chip cookies and mini cheesecakes. The response was overwhelming. Customers raved about the flavors, complimented the presentation, and even asked about custom orders for birthdays and holidays. By the end of the day, Emily's cheeks hurt from smiling so much, but she couldn't remember feeling happier. Word spread quickly about Bennett's Bakes. Within weeks, the bakery became a local favorite. Parents brought their kids after school. For milk and cookies, couples stopped by for dessert dates, and office workers picked up boxes of muffins and scones to share with colleagues. Emily worked tirelessly to keep up with demand, often staying late into the night to bake fresh batches for the next day. It was exhausting, but every time someone told her how much they loved her creations, she felt a surge of pride. Despite her success, Emily never forgot where she came from or the struggles she had faced along the way. She made it a point to give back to the community that had supported her. Every Friday, she set aside a portion of the day's unsold pastries and donated them to a nearby shelter. On weekends, she hosted free baking workshops for kids, teaching them how to make simple treats like sugar cookies and banana bread. These small acts of kindness weren't just about giving back. They were also a way for Emily to honor Harold's legacy. One chilly Saturday morning, as Emily prepared for another workshop, a young woman walked into the bakery. She looked around hesitantly, clutching a worn backpack tightly against her chest. Her name was Lily, and she couldn't have been older than 20. Her clothes were clean but faded, and there was a nervousness in her eyes that Emily recognized all too well. "Hi," Lily said softly, approaching the counter. "I saw your flyer outside about the baking class. Is it okay if I join?" "Of course," Emily replied warmly. "We're just getting started. Do you want to grab an apron?" Lily nodded, slipping off her coat and tying on one of the spare aprons hanging by the door. As the group gathered around the work table, Emily noticed that Lily seemed distracted, her movements slow and unsure. When it came time to mix ingredients, Lily hesitated, glancing at the others before quietly admitting, "I've never done anything like this before." "That's okay," Emily reassured her. "Everyone starts somewhere. Here, let me show you." Over the next hour, Emily guided Lily through the process of making chocolate chip cookies, patiently explaining each step and encouraging her to try things on her own. By the end of the class, Lily's face lit up with pride as she held up her finished tray of cookies. "These are amazing," she exclaimed, breaking one in half to taste it. "I can't believe I made these." "You did great," Emily said with a smile. "You have a real talent for baking." After the workshop ended, most of the participants left, chatting excitedly about their creations. But Lily lingered, helping Emily pack up leftover supplies. Finally, she spoke. "Thank you for letting me come today. I wasn't sure if I'd fit in, but it felt nice to do something fun for a change." Emily paused, sensing there was more to Lily's story. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. Lily hesitated, then sighed. "Not really. I've been trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, but it's hard when you don't have much to start with. I love cooking. I always have. But I don't think I could afford culinary school." Emily's heart ached at the familiar struggle in Lily's voice. She thought back to her own journey, the long hours at the diner, the sacrifices she and Jack had made, and the moment Harold stepped in to change everything. Without hesitation, she decided to offer Lily the same kind of support she had once received. "Listen," Emily said, placing a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. "Why don't you come by the bakery tomorrow? We could use some extra help around here, and I'd be happy to teach you more about baking. Who knows? Maybe someday you'll open your own place." Lily's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really? You'd do that for me?" "Absolutely," Emily replied with a grin. "Everyone deserves a chance to chase their dreams." The next day, Lily arrived bright and early, eager to learn. Over the following weeks, she became a regular helper at the bakery, assisting with everything from mixing dough to decorating cakes. Emily took her under her wing, sharing tips and tricks she had learned during her time at culinary school. Slowly but surely, Lily's confidence grew. She began experimenting with her own recipes, adding unique twists to classic desserts that delighted customers. As months passed, Emily watched Lily blossom into a talented baker. She reminded herself of the girl she used to be, full of potential, but held back by circumstances. Determined to help Lily succeed, Emily encouraged her to apply for scholarships and grants designed to support aspiring chefs. Together they worked on applications, practiced interview questions, and brainstormed ideas for a future business. One afternoon, as they sat together in the bakery's kitchen, Lily burst into tears. Startled, Emily rushed to her side. "What's wrong?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "I got accepted," Lily whispered, holding up a letter. "They're going to pay for my tuition." Emily's eyes filled with tears as she hugged Lily tightly. "That's incredible. I'm so proud of you." Lily shook her head, overwhelmed with emotion. "I wouldn't be here without you, Emily. You believed in me when no one else did. Thank you." In that moment, Emily realized how far she had come since her days at Maggie's diner. What started as a single act of kindness from Harold to her had grown into something much bigger. By paying it forward, she had not only changed her own life but also inspired others to pursue their dreams. As winter turned to spring, Bennett's Bakes continued to thrive. Emily expanded the menu, introduced seasonal specials, and hired additional staff to handle the growing number of customers. Yet despite the busyness, she always found time to mentor young bakers like Lily, reminding them that success wasn't just about talent, it was about perseverance and heart. One evening, as Emily locked up the bakery and turned off the lights, she paused to look out the window. The streets were quiet now, bathed in the soft glow of street lamps. For a moment, she allowed herself to reflect on everything that had happened. From the struggling waitress barely scraping by to the owner of a beloved bakery, her journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. But it wasn't just about her accomplishments, it was about the connections she had made along the way. Harold's generosity had sparked a chain reaction, touching lives far beyond what either of them could have imagined. And though she hadn't seen him since that fateful day at the diner, Emily knew he would be proud of what she had built. With a contented sigh, Emily pulled her coat tighter around her and stepped out into the cool night air. As she walked home, she thought about the future, not just for herself but for everyone whose lives she had touched. Kindness, she realized, was like yeast in dough. When nurtured, it rose and spread, creating something beautiful and lasting. And so Emily Carter's story became more than just a tale of personal triumph. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts of compassion could ripple outward, changing the world in ways no one could predict. Years passed, and Bennett's Bakes grew from a small neighborhood bakery into a beloved institution in Chicago. Emily Carter's name became synonymous with kindness, creativity, and delicious treats. Her signature desserts, rich chocolate, cakes, delicate macarons, and buttery scones were featured in local magazines and blogs. People came from all over the city to taste her creations, and tourists often added the bakery to their list of must-visit spots. But despite her success, Emily never lost sight of what truly mattered. She remained deeply connected to her community, using her business as a platform to give back. Every holiday season, she organized fundraisers to support families in need. She partnered with local shelters to provide meals and baked goods during the coldest months of the year. And she continued mentoring young bakers like Lily, many of whom went on to pursue careers in the culinary arts. Lily herself had blossomed under Emily's guidance. After graduating from culinary school, she returned to Bennett's Bakes as an assistant baker. Together, they dreamed up new recipes and expanded the menu to include savory items like quiches and sandwiches. The bakery thrived under their combined efforts, becoming not just a place to buy pastries but also a hub of warmth and connection for everyone who walked through its doors. One crisp autumn morning, as Emily unlocked the bakery and flipped the closed sign to open, she noticed a familiar figure standing across the street. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. The man looked older now, his hair grayer, his steps slower. But there was no mistaking that. It was Harold Bennett. Her heart skipped a beat. For years she had wondered about him, hoping he was safe and well. She hadn't dared to imagine that she would ever see him again. Without thinking, she rushed outside, her apron still dusted with flour. "Harold," she called out, her voice trembling with disbelief. The elderly man turned, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. "Emily," he said, his voice soft but filled with warmth. "It's been too long." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she hugged him tightly. "I can't believe you're here. How have you been? Are you okay?" Harold chuckled gently. "I'm doing well, thank you. I've been keeping track of your success. From afar? Of course. I knew you'd do great things." Emily shook her head, overwhelmed by emotion. "None of this would have happened without you. You gave me a chance when I needed it most. I owe everything to you." Harold waved off her gratitude with a humble smile. "You earned every bit of it, Emily. All I did was plant a seed. You're the one who made it grow." They stepped inside the bakery, where the scent of freshly baked bread mingled with the aroma of coffee brewing in the corner. Emily poured them each a cup and invited Harold to sit at one of the cozy tables near the window. As they talked, she filled him in on everything that had happened since their last meeting: the opening of the bakery, the scholarships she offered to aspiring bakers, and the countless lives she had touched along the way. "I named it Bennett's Bakes," she told him, gesturing to the sign above the door, "to honor you." Harold's eyes glistened with tears. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Emily insisted. "You changed my life, Harold. You showed me that kindness isn't just about giving, it's about creating ripples that spread far beyond what we can see." Harold nodded thoughtfully. "That's true. Kindness has a way of coming full circle, doesn't it? Look at how much good you've done because of one small act." As they sat together, sharing stories and laughter, Emily realized something profound. Harold's impact extended far beyond her own life. His generosity had inspired her to pay it forward, and in doing so, she had created a legacy of compassion that touched countless others. It was a cycle of goodwill, a chain reaction that showed no signs of stopping. Later that afternoon, after Harold left with promises to stay in touch, Emily reflected on their conversation. She thought about all the people she had helped over the years: Lily, Jack, the families at the shelter, the children who attended her workshops, and realized that each of them carried a piece of Harold's kindness within them. Even those who had never met him directly benefited from the ripple effect of his actions. Inspired by this realization, Emily decided to take her mission a step further. She began planning a series of community events aimed at fostering connections and spreading positivity. There were bake sales to raise funds for local charities, cooking classes for seniors, and even storytelling nights where neighbors could share their experiences and dreams. Each event brought people together, strengthening the bonds within the community. One evening, during one of these gatherings, Emily stood at the front of the room, addressing a crowd of eager faces. "When I started this bakery," she began, "I wanted it to be more than just a place to buy cookies and cakes. I wanted it to be a reminder that kindness matters, that even the smallest gestures can change someone's life." She paused, scanning the room. "I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for a man named Harold Bennett. He taught me that we all have the power to make a difference, no matter how big or small our contributions may seem. So tonight, I want to ask each of you to think about how you can pay it forward. Who can you help? What seeds of kindness can you plant?" The room erupted in applause, and several people approached Emily afterward to share their ideas. Some volunteered to mentor students, while others pledged to organize drives for food and clothing. Emily watched with pride as her community rallied around the spirit of giving, knowing that Harold's influence would continue to inspire generations to come. In the months that followed, Emily received letters and messages from people whose lives had been touched by her work. A single mother wrote to thank her for providing free baking lessons that helped her start a side business. A teenager expressed gratitude for the scholarship that allowed him to attend culinary school. And an elderly woman described how attending one of the storytelling nights had rekindled her love for writing poetry. Each message reminded Emily of the incredible power of kindness. It wasn't about grand gestures or sweeping changes. It was about showing up, being present, and offering a helping hand whenever possible. Whether it was paying for a stranger's meal, supporting a struggling friend, or simply listening when someone needed to talk, every act of compassion contributed to a larger tapestry of hope and connection. As winter settled over Chicago once again, Emily found herself standing in the bakery late one night, surrounded by the comforting hum of activity. The ovens glowed softly, casting golden light across the countertops lined with trays of freshly baked goods. Outside, snowflakes drifted lazily to the ground, blanketing the city in quiet beauty. For a moment, Emily closed her eyes and let herself feel the weight of everything she had accomplished. From the days of scraping by as a waitress to building a thriving business rooted in love and generosity, her journey had been anything but easy. Yet every challenge, every sacrifice, had led her to this point, a life filled with purpose and meaning. And as she opened her eyes and took in the sight of her bustling bakery, she whispered a silent thank you to Harold. Though he had re-entered her life only briefly, his presence lingered in every corner of Bennett's Bakes. His belief in her had ignited a spark that refused to fade, lighting the way for countless others to follow. Kindness, Emily realized, was like yeast in dough. When nurtured, it rose and spread, creating something beautiful and lasting. And in her bakery, a place where flour, sugar, and butter transformed into moments of joy, she had found proof that even the simplest acts of compassion could leave an indelible mark on the world. Years later, Emily Carter stood on the stage of a large auditorium, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nostalgia. The room was filled with hundreds of people, friends, family, former customers, and even strangers who had heard about her story. They had gathered to celebrate the launch of her memoir, Bennett's Bakes, A Story of Kindness, which chronicled her journey from a struggling waitress to the owner of a beloved bakery that had touched so many lives. As she looked out at the sea of faces, Emily felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She thought back to all the moments that had brought her here, the kindness of Harold Bennett, the sacrifices made by her brother Jack, the unwavering support of her community, and the countless acts of generosity she had witnessed along the way. It was surreal to think that her life, once defined by hardship, had become an inspiration for others. The event began with a short video montage of photos and clips showcasing Emily's journey. There were pictures of her early days at Maggie's diner, snapshots of Bennett's Bakes in its infancy, and images of the smiling faces of those she had helped over the years. As the video played, the audience erupted into applause, their cheers filling the room with warmth and energy. When it was time for Emily to speak, she stepped up to the microphone, her hands trembling slightly. She took a deep breath, letting the love and encouragement from the crowd steady her nerves. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice soft but clear. "This moment means more to me than I can put into words." She paused, glancing down at the notes she had prepared, though she knew most of what she wanted to say came straight from her heart. "When I started writing this book, I didn't do it for fame or recognition. I did it because I wanted to share a simple truth. Kindness matters. It has the power to change lives, including my own." Emily went on to recount her story, starting with the day she met Harold at the diner. She spoke about how his unexpected generosity had given her hope during one of the darkest times in her life. "Harold didn't just pay for my meal that day," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "He reminded me that there are still good people in the world, people who see potential in others, even when they can't see it in themselves." She described the challenges she faced as she pursued her dream of opening a bakery, from juggling school and work to overcoming self-doubt. But she also talked about the joy she found in creating something meaningful, a business built not just on recipes but on compassion and connection. "Every cake we bake, every cookie we frost is infused with love," Emily explained. "Because that's what Harold gave me, a gift wrapped in kindness, and I promised myself that I would pass it on." Her speech shifted to the impact Bennett's Bakes had on the community. She shared stories of the people whose lives had been transformed through programs like the baking workshops and scholarships. She highlighted Lily's journey, explaining how a young woman with big dreams but limited resources had blossomed into a talented chef thanks to the opportunities provided by the bakery. "But none of this would have been possible without all of you," Emily added, gesturing to the audience. "You've supported us, believed in us, and allowed us to grow. This isn't just my story, it's ours." Toward the end of her speech, Emily turned reflective. "I often think about Harold and wonder where he is now. He taught me that kindness isn't just about giving, it's about creating ripples that spread far beyond what we can see. Because of him, I learned to pay it forward. And because of that, I've seen firsthand how a single act of compassion can inspire others to do the same." She concluded with a heartfelt message. "If there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's this. Never underestimate the power of your actions. Whether it's buying someone a meal, lending a listening ear, or simply offering a smile, you have the ability to make someone's day brighter and maybe even change their life forever." The audience erupted into applause, standing to their feet as Emily wiped away tears. Among the crowd was Jack, who beamed with pride as he watched his sister receive the recognition she deserved. Beside him sat Lily, now a successful baker in her own right, holding back tears of her own. Together, they represented the ripple effect of Harold's original act of kindness, a chain reaction that continued to grow stronger with each passing year. After the event, Emily signed copies of her book, chatting with fans and posing for photos. Many attendees approached her to share how her story had resonated with them. Some spoke of hardships they had overcome, while others expressed gratitude for the lessons they had learned about the importance of kindness. Each interaction left Emily feeling humbled and inspired. That evening, as the celebration wound down, Emily returned to her apartment, exhausted but content. She sat at her kitchen table, flipping through a copy of her book. On the dedication page, she had written, "To Harold Bennett, whose kindness changed everything." Just as she closed the book, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from an address she didn't recognize. Curious, she opened it and began reading. "Dear Emily," the message began. "My name is Robert Nash, and I am Harold Bennett's nephew. My uncle passed away peacefully last week, surrounded by loved ones. Before he died, he asked me to send you something. A letter he wrote shortly after meeting you. He hoped you would receive it someday." Attached to the email was a scanned copy of the letter. Emily's hands trembled as she opened it, her eyes scanning the familiar handwriting. "Dear Emily," Harold had written, "if you're reading this, it means my time has come to an end. But please know that I leave this world with a full heart knowing that I played a small part in your incredible journey. You have accomplished so much more than I ever imagined, and I am proud of the person you've become." He went on to describe how meeting her had reignited his faith in humanity. "Your kindness reminded me that goodness exists everywhere, even in the darkest corners. You proved that one act of compassion can spark a chain reaction, touching lives in ways we may never fully understand." The letter ended with a final note of encouragement. "Keep doing what you're doing, Emily. Keep spreading light and love. The world needs more people like you." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she finished reading. Though Harold was gone, his words lived on, etched into her heart forever. She realized that his legacy wasn't confined to the past. It was alive in every act of kindness she performed, every life she touched, and every dream she helped nurture. In the weeks that followed, Emily threw herself into expanding her mission. She partnered with local schools to create mentorship programs for aspiring chefs, ensuring that young talents like Lily had access to resources and guidance. She launched a foundation dedicated to supporting families in need, using proceeds from her book sales to fund initiatives focused on education, housing, and healthcare. Bennett's Bakes continued to thrive, becoming a symbol of hope and resilience. New branches opened across the country, each location carrying forward Harold's legacy by offering training programs and hosting community events. Emily traveled frequently, visiting these locations to connect with staff and customers, always reminding them of the values upon which the bakery was founded. One afternoon, as Emily walked through the bustling streets of Chicago, she noticed a young girl sitting alone on a bench, clutching a tattered sketchbook. Something about the scene struck a chord within her. Approaching the girl, Emily knelt down and smiled. "Hi there," she said gently. "What are you drawing?" The girl hesitated before showing her the page. It was a picture of a bakery, complete with colorful cakes and smiling customers. "I want to open my own bakery someday," she admitted shyly. Emily's heart swelled with emotion. "That's wonderful," she replied. "Never stop dreaming, okay? And if you ever need help, don't hesitate to ask." As she walked away, Emily couldn't help but smile. She knew that somewhere, somehow, Harold was watching over her. His kindness had set off a chain reaction, inspiring countless others, including her, to pay it forward. And as long as people continued to believe in the power of compassion, his legacy would live on forever. Emily Carter's journey, from a struggling waitress to a celebrated entrepreneur, was proof that even the smallest acts of kindness could change lives. Through her bakery, her foundation, and her unwavering commitment to helping others, she had created a legacy of her own. A legacy rooted in love, generosity, and the belief that goodness could conquer all. And so, Emily carried Harold's torch, lighting the way for future generations to follow. For in a world often overshadowed by challenges and uncertainty, kindness remained the brightest beacon of hope. A reminder that no matter how dark things might seem, there was always a chance to make the world a little brighter.